Hi Curious, and welcome back! There have often been many comparisons made between Prince Harry and his brother Prince William, saying that one was always brought up with the knowledge that he would one day be a king, and that he had to act all proper, while Harry was able to live a somewhat more relaxed life. But they were not the first royals who had lived like that. Their grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and her sister Princess Margaret went through a similar thing growing up. What kind of scandals did the Queen's sister cause? And why has her private life caused her such a stir? And just how much of an opposite is she of her sister? And what famous rock stars did the Queen's sister allegedly sleep with? Stay with us until the very end to learn about all of the royal information. But before we continue, don't forget to hit the bell and the subscription button so you don't miss any of our future videos. Many internet users have agreed that the Netflix show The Crown did a pretty good job in the way they portrayed the Queen's younger sister, depicting her as the life of the party and who always went out and had fun, unlike it had been with her older sister, who had more duties given to the fact that she was the Queen. Not to mention that her, in some way, forbidden love with Peter Townsend had viewers rooting for them from the very beginning. But just how much of a rebel and of a spirit of the princess party was Princess Margaret in real life? Though, being on the topic of the Netflix show, why not check out our previous video about how the show differs from real life? But for now, stick with us as we look into the life of the Queen's sisters. Starting with Margaret, she was born Princess Margaret Rose of York on August 21st of 1930 in Glamis Castle, Scotland. She was actually the first member of the British royal family to be born in Scotland for more than 300 years. Though for Margaret, it wouldn't be her only royal first, and we will talk about them more later in the video. At the time of her birth, she was fourth in line for the British throne. But that quickly changed when she was 5 years old, and her family was thrown even more into the spotlight when her uncle, King Edward VIII, infamously abdicated the throne, which caused her father, King George VI, to become king and make her second in line for the throne after her older sister. Speaking of her sister, it has been reported as a child, Margaret idolized Elizabeth and the two carried this relationship into adulthood, but with that came some problems as well, but more on that in a moment. But as it often is with siblings, there often had been a hefty amount of sibling rivalry and the two girls often came to blows, and according to their governess, the young future queen liked to throw punches while her younger sister was much more of a biter. Though where her family life is concerned, both of the girls were adored by their father, and while the king called Elizabeth his pride, his youngest daughter, whom he often doted, was his joy. And some report that because of this, her spoiled upbringing soon started to show, and in one way, it might have cost her the love of her life. Her father would often allow her, even at the age of 13, to stay up past her bedtime and attend lavish royal dinners, and this meant that it wasn't long before she grew into a beautiful, vivacious, and very willful young woman. She was able to walk into a room and light it up, which is something that many courtiers had noticed about her, with one commenting that she was very sure of herself and full of humor. Apparently, it was her personality that was the cause of trouble to start with, as allegedly, Marion Crawford, the governess of the sisters, thought that the younger was an attention hog, and especially when it came to taking the attention of her more important sister. It has also been alleged that she wrote to a friend of hers to only invite Elizabeth to a party, not wanting Margaret to come to steal the thunder. It was something that the future queen herself once noticed, but it seems that she didn't mind the fact that the spotlight wasn't on her, and according to Newsweek, she once said, "Oh, it's much easier when Margaret's there. Everybody laughs at what Margaret says." But certainly one of the biggest scandals and troubles for the royals was the relationship between the princess and Peter Townsend. The Netflix show did quite a good job portraying their whirlwind relationship. Townsend was a royal aide and a 15 years Margaret's senior, and not to mention a married man and later a divorced one, which as you might know from the history has been an issue in the royal family, such as Charles and Camilla and the infamous abdication of King Edward so he could be with Wallis Simpson. And if you want to know more about them, then we suggest you just check out our previous video. Allegedly, when the princess was 13 and Peter a new staff member, he had already caught her eye, and from then on, she had flirted with him relentlessly, not seemingly minding the fact that he was married and much older than she was. She pursued him for a while, with Townsend not returning her feelings for a long time, but in the end, he couldn't deny how he felt about her, and the two started seeing each other. In April of 1953, he had proposed to the princess, to which she said yes, but given that at the point their father had passed away, and her sister was getting ready to become the queen, and she herself was only 23 years old, she had to ask for her permission. But that only caused more trouble, and afraid of the stir it would cause at the beginning of her reign, Elizabeth insisted that Margaret wait for a year and keep the relationship a secret until after her coronation. But that also didn't go down too well. Their romance made the government to turn on her, and therefore on the Queen. She had given the permission for the two to marry, so the Queen found a loophole and begged her sister to wait until she was 25 and no longer needed her permission. Though while the royal family was facing some tough times with the public and there was the fear of turning against the royals, it seemed that many people had actually wished Princess Margaret happiness with Townsend. And because of it, upon the princess's 25th birthday, many waited with held breaths to see what her decision will be, though that turned out not to be what they were after. But then, after weeks of speculation about their relationship, on October 31st of 1955, Margaret had dropped the absolute bombshell when an official statement was released which said, "I have decided not to marry Group Captain Peter Townsend." And as you can imagine, curious, many were shocked as to why she did it. While most of it remains a mystery, one of the things that she would have not been able to do was to live as a civilian, because in order to marry him, she would have to renounce her royal title and other privileges, and this is why, where many claim, the fact that she was spoiled comes into hand, and that one thing that she would not have been able to part with was her royal allowance, and they simply couldn't live on the money that Peter was making. After such a heartbreak, many believed that Princess would never marry again, something that she herself had said in the series The Crown. But they were wrong. In 1958, she had met Bohemian photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones, and by October the following year, the couple was engaged, and they had wed on May 6th of 1960. And this is where she had her second royal first, since her first wedding was the first ever British royal wedding to have been broadcast on national television and watched by an estimated number of 300 million people. The couple had two children, son David, born in 1961, and daughter Sarah, born in 1964. Though, here curious, you can see the differences between the two sisters, and similarities with William and Harry. One going after men and the other happily married, though in both cases the younger sibling did settle down in the end. And while everything seemed to be perfect at first, it was far from the truth. Anthony was openly bisexual, and as his friends once told a British newspaper at the time, if it moves, he'll have it, which quickly led to a string of alleged infidelities, but not all of them were on his part. Many had noted that Jones was a workaholic and that she often complained, but he was never around, and that she was lonely. But she wasn't completely blameless. In the 60s, she too had embarked on a string of extramarital affairs of her own, and some rumors had even claimed that in those days, the princess had managed to fall into the beds of famous people such as actor Warren Beatty and rocker Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. What do you think, curious? Do you believe they were true? She had even started what she called a loving friendship with a man named Roddy Llewellyn, a landscape gardener 17 years younger than her. But that also turned out to be disastrous. In the winter of 1976, a notorious photograph hit the British tabloids. The snap showed Princess Margaret and her supposed boy toy Roddy sunning themselves on the beach in Mustique, clad only in their swimsuits. Politicians immediately and cruelly denounced Margaret as a floozy and a royal parasite, but the photo's real damage was to her marriage. After the tabloids hung Margaret's dirty laundry all over their front pages, the British public could see just what a downward turn her fairy tale marriage had taken. And with the jig up, Margaret and Anthony finally sought a separation, officially divorcing in 1978. And this was her third royal first, as she was the first for a senior royal since Queen Victoria's granddaughter. Her love troubles were not the only problems she had. Princess Margaret was often the soul of the party and thus was allegedly never seen without a drink in her hands. And it wasn't just a fondness for high percentage beverages that was allegedly an issue, but also the use of illicit substances. And through her marital problems, she didn't have much support either. According to reports at the time, her family often took her husband's side in their squabbles, thinking that it was just Margaret being dramatic again. And things apparently had gotten so bad that she had become so dependent on her then boy toy Roddy that when he left on a spontaneous trip with his friend, she tried to end her life by taking sleep medication. However, as the years went on, things did not get any better for her. By the end of her life, many thought that Princess Margaret became a parody of herself. The caliber of her lovers plummeted, and her crudeness only grew with her disturbing drinking habits. And even the most casual monarchists felt that she had disgraced her family name, and people started criticizing her as a nightclub burlesque of a sister. Eventually, Margaret's lifestyle caught up with her. In addition to her other unsavory habits, the princess was also a near lifelong smoker, having started when she was just 15 years old at her latest. By the 1980s, she needed to have doctors remove her left lung, a procedure that some pointed out eerily recalled her father's demise. And in the 90s, things didn't improve. She suffered a series of strokes and also scalded her feet in the bathroom mishap, leaving her bedridden on a wheelchair bound for months on the end. And by 2001, she was partially paralyzed and even had difficulty swallowing. And on February 9th of 2002, Princess Margaret passed in King Edward VII's hospital at the age of 71 after her long and difficult battle with multiple illnesses. The day holds an eerie meaning. Following a decline that looked much like her father's, Margaret also passed just 3 days after the 50th anniversary of King George VI's own death. And to make things more eerie, the Queen Mother passed away 7 weeks after her youngest daughter at the age of 101. So curious, what are your thoughts on Princess Margaret? Do you think that had she had become queen, she would have been more or less liked by the public? Do you see any similarities between the two sisters and William and Harry? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.